fix. And when you have problems that come up, you try to deal with solutions. I'm one of those people where I'm one of those people, man, where I like to look for solutions versus bitching and moaning.
Yep.
And I'll tell you right now, man, um, I have a hard time seeing how you get this team up and going, not just for the rest of this season, but for what about next year?
Yep.
You rested all your laurels on saying, hey, you know what? Joe Burrow wasn't healthy. Joe Burrow couldn't stay healthy, whatever the case may be. And now you finally get Joe Burrow in a healthy year and playing at an MVP like level. And this is what happens.
Yeah.
Like, I think that the margin for error in the NFL is so slim. And I think that the true measure of a coach of a team is the ability to win close score games, because in the NFL, all these teams are talented. All the teams you face are talented. You have to find a way to turn out these victories. So it can't just be I get it happening once or twice, but that being the calling card each and every single week,
5 weeks.
That says something. Your only victories, notable victories, come against teams with losing records. You have not done that against teams with a winning record. So at some point that becomes your identity. And I'm not saying, nobody is out here is without fault. I think that the blame rests on the coaching staff. I think the blame rests on the front office. But regardless of what you do, like it can't be one without the other, in my opinion, Daniel.
Yeah.
I think that if you were to get rid of this coaching staff, well, you might want to look to make some organizational changes in the front office as well.
Yeah.
A new voice is needed. Just like how Marvin stayed on the job for as long as he did, right? At some point the message becomes stale. And my fear is, the Bengals going on that Super Bowl run did more to hurt, their future prospects versus, help them. And I think it's one of those things where we're going to be sitting with we're going to be sitting with this for a while. The reason why the locker room, and somebody asked that, I think earlier, Malik, do I believe that the locker room has lost confidence? I do. I think winning cures everything. And I think when you aren't winning, especially against good teams, it hurts. It sucks, especially when you're healthy and you just can't seem to find the answer. First it was, Joe Burrow can't stay healthy. Well, now you get Joe Burrow fully healthy. Okay. Well, that answers that. Then it's, T. Higgins hasn't been out there for the Bengals. Well, T. Higgins was out there tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter what the Bengals seem to try to do. It doesn't seem to be working out for them. Mm-hmm. And I personally, as somebody who watches film, watches the team, just like I'm sure a lot of you do, I'm really having a hard time placing my finger on it. I don't see how a defense can go from being so poor in the first half to shutting out a Chargers offense in the second half. Maybe the Chargers maybe the Chargers started resting on the laurels. I have no idea. But the Bengals scored 21 unanswered and then just shat the bed in the final, 10 minutes, 8 minutes of the game, whatever it was. I don't know, man. Damn, I'm having a hard time with. You never see me have a hard time. I'm having a hard time with this one, man. But not just with the season. Mm-hmm. This shit is wild. It makes no sense. Yeah. And dare I say, I don't want to say fire people, and then the levy just. And when I say fire people, I'm not talking about the front office. I think you need to change shit in the front office regardless. Yeah. Let me be clear on that. So this ain't a Duke Tobin thing. This ain't me talking about how Duke Tobin needs to be gone, or he needs to be stepping down. Somebody else needs to step up. But from a coaching standpoint, you have to ask yourself, and here's one thing I will offer up. And I think the owner of the Titans did this with some players. I think you should sit down with some of the leaders of the team, people like Trey Henderson, people like Joe Burrow, people like Jamar Chase. If you plan to make T. Higgins still a part of the a member of this team, I think it might behoove Bengals ownership to literally sit them guys down at some point and ask a simple question. Do you still have a vote of confidence in Zach Taylor as the head coach and of this coaching staff? Yeah. That might sound a little extra, but I like a lot of organizations do stuff like that, especially when they're making a big change. Like this would be a big change. You're talking about a coach that, regardless whether we like it or not, he was a part of the team going to a Super Bowl. He was a part of the turnaround for Marvin Lewis, right? But those are conversations that need to be had. I don't think any conversation is off the table. What are your thoughts, Dan?
Yeah. No, and I think from an organizational standpoint, you're right. And you go look at these other teams. That's what you have to compare other teams that have done it and see what do they have that this Cincinnati Bengals team, doesn't have. And I think you brought it up great, man, is, if it's something that you can't quite put your finger on, I think that shows that there's an intangible that we're missing. And something that was very clear and a perfect example. Let's look at this Chargers team, Malik.
Mm-hmm.
For the past 3 years, and yes, they haven't won anything yet. Let's be clear.
Mm-hmm.
For the past 3 seasons, the conversation amongst Chargers fans, amongst the locker room, amongst the pundits in the media was that this team was not a tough football team,
Mm-hmm.
that this team rolled over and they died, that this team could not win in the trenches. What did they do, Malik? They got rid of Brandon Staley. They got rid of their GM. And who did they bring in? They brought in Jim Harbaugh. They brought in Joe Ortiz. They brought in a bunch of new names. They built the trenches of the offensive line. And you just see, and it sounds crazy, but go look at what Jim Harbaugh, look at what the players are saying about their head coach. He is the best leader I've ever had in my life. Justin Herbert looks like a completely new quarterback. And I think that that's the message I'm taking away from this game, Malik. And I hate to say it, and you talked about this before, Jim Harbaugh is one of the greatest coaches we've ever seen. He went to Michigan and he turned them around. Yes, they didn't, at times have a lengthy dominance, but they won a national championship. And you look at what he's done to that locker room, to that culture, and I feel like that's the issue with the Cincinnati Bengals. It really feels like they're getting carried by Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. That's what it feels like. And they've got a lot of great talent. T. Higgins stepped up. The defense stepped up in a big time way. But that's the sentiment that I'm taking away is so many times Joe Burrow bails this team out. Jamar Chase bails this team out when it shouldn't always be that. And I feel like, Malik, it's got to be a culture thing. It's got to be something that's not being instilled from the top.
Let me be clear. He does some good things from a culture standpoint, bringing a team together. And this isn't just like, again, the offense showed up in the second half. They didn't show up in the first half, right? They showed up in the second half in a big way, but put points up on the board. I'm just thinking about if we're talking about making wholesale changes, you know, if you're making wholesale changes, you need to be able to assess the head coaching position, the offensive coordinator, the defense coordinator, whoever.
Yeah.
The person that you call director of player personnel. I don't know, man.
Yeah, and I'm also in this. We may share something different. I'm also not saying to fire him now. I'm not saying that.
No.
And I think that's where the difference. We are not overreacting. I'm talking about a team that wants to win a Super Bowl, a team that has the makings to win a Super Bowl. In my opinion, I think we've shared the same sentiment. At this point, you have a healthy Joe Burrow for 11 weeks. If you do not make the playoffs this year, I find it very hard to believe that, and this is a conversation that any fan should have, or you have to question the man at top if you don't make the playoffs with this team. So I'm not saying I think it would be stupid to fire him now, but if they don't make the playoffs, you have to have that conversation.